The Christian Missionaries, the book by Professor J.F. Ade-Ajayi, Jacob Festus Ade-Ajayi. He wrote, what he tried to say in that book is that the missionaries first came to Lagos in 1842. And it was 4 years after, 1846, that the missionaries moved from Lagos to enter Abeokuta in Egba land. And then to talk about the influence of the missionaries both in Lagos and in Egba land, and then of course in Yoruba land. That's what Ade-Ajayi talked about. And the influence of this development was the building of schools. Of course, the spread of the Christian religion that we now know today. When somebody asked about was Lagos the first territory in Africa or the other territories owned by the British? In the 19th century, the British established spheres of influence, particularly in East Africa. It was very strategic. In East Africa, the area that we now call Uganda. Actually, Uganda was named after the kingdom of Buganda. If you remove the B, it becomes Uganda. The kingdom was called Buganda. The people are called Baganda. So, British influence was in East Africa, in Uganda, then also in the area called Kenya. The whole of East Africa generally, then of course, the Germans, the German traders were also around the area we now call Tanganyika, which is now Tanzania. But there's time it was called Tanganyika, but it's now called Tanzania. The British did not establish any formal control until late 19th century. Now in Benin, Gold Coast, Nigeria or Lagos, Sierra Leone, and what do you call now? Gambia. They were British colonies. The British went to Sierra Leone and established a city called Freetown. Freetown was established first as an opportunity for free slaves who desired to leave England to come out to Africa to settle because they didn't know where they were taken from. And those that were captured in the high seas, were returned back to land. And of course, the only place they could take them to was Freetown. So that was already established as a colony before the conquest of Lagos. What was Amafin doing during when the British invaded Lagos? In actual fact, Lagos was not part of Oyo Empire at the time of British conquest. It was part of the Benin Empire. It's obvious that, well, because of distance, you look at Oyo Empire today, you think Oyo Empire is just after Ibadan. That's not correct. Oyo Empire, the old Oyo Empire, it was located in Kwara State. Kwara State. That's what we call the northern frontiers of Yoruba land. Actually, Yorubas own the whole of Kwara, Kogi, and all that. They speak the language, the Yoruba language. They own all of that. So the old Oyo itself had its own territory. And by the way in which the empire was organized, they had a war general who was the Arayama Kakanfu, who was the military general fighting wars all over. However, even after the conquest of Lagos, don't forget that was the period, that Yorubas were engaged in civil wars. Not intertribal wars, Yoruba wars. By the end of the 18th century, internal political crisis that created problems for Oyo. By the 19th century, the collapse of Oyo itself triggered a series of problems because of the need to create balance of power in the struggle to fill the vacuum created by the fall of Oyo Empire. And so all kinds of alliances in Yoruba land, the Egba, the Ekiti-Parapọ̀, the Owo, the Ife, Ilesha, they were all fighting. But this wars did not come to an end towards the 19th century, by which time, of course, Lagos had taken over by the British. That is why the Yorubas or your empire will not mobilize forces to protect Lagos from the British. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The next set of questions will be the final. Okay, so that we can watch the
questions fast. The first one is about Calabar. I was very interested in the role Calabar played in Nigerian history. I think you dwelled on it very, very briefly. Was Calabar the capital of the country, and how long was it, and why was it taken back to Lagos? The second one is about the influence of the returning Africans from Cuba and Brazil. You didn't dwell much on that at all. And I'm interested in that aspect in the development of Lagos, because I think at the same time when the British was trying to establish control, they found these people amenable because they spoke the European language, and they had just returned from the New World, so they were able to use them in some way to also help against the area. So I'm interested in the thing of that.
All right. John Bancroft, who was the British consul for the Bight of Benin and Biafra, it was when he relocated, in about 1872, from Lagos to Calabar. He was concerned about expansion of the British Empire towards the Cameroon Mountains, and then up north towards Taraba in present-day Nigeria. That was his major concern. And since Lagos was now secure under the British, because it has now become a colony and part of the British Empire, he now felt that, look, the best to do that was to make Lagos, Calabar, the capital of Nigeria. Well, the history is a very short one. It was not for too long. It was less than 5 years or so where he operated from. But he was now advised that that Calabar itself had its own creeks, Ensure Town, Juke Town, and they had a peculiar problem at that particular time, which was not visible in Lagos. The Efik society with the problem of the blood men, the blood men issue in Calabar. And it was actually a threat to peace and security in that area. And so they didn't feel that Calabar was secure enough as the new capital of Nigeria. That is why it was advised to return back to Lagos. So Lagos was definitely established. Secondly, to move Lagos, the capital from Lagos, will mean to relocate the government, the seat of government, the central legislature, the executive, the judiciary, to Calabar. And this was, of course, one of the great problems in terms of cost to the colonial government. The returnees, I didn't talk about it in the paper. It's there in the paper. I know Lagos did something. To some extent, some returnees were accepted in Lagos. Returnees from Brazil, returnees from the New World, even America itself, the returnees from Europe. Now, these returnees had new ideas, and most of them, their cultural habits, which they brought along with them, also began to influence people here in Lagos. The way of dressing, the shoes, and building of houses. And all of this, began to influence the style of Lagos life, the creation of an urban city. I talk about urban and regional planning. It was these returnees that brought these ideas. And of course, the Europeans or the British were willing to use them to construct most of the projects that were colonial projects here in Lagos, particularly some of these prison walls. Some of them are still standing, as you can see. The returnees actually had a great deal of influence here, Since we're talking about empire and imperialism, there's a limit to which we can introduce the returnees, but they had a great influence in Lagos. Some time ago, when the building was pulled down, it's somewhere in Lagos, I read it on the internet. Oh my God, a lot of people cried. I said, why should Lagos State government allow this to happen? That it was built in the 19th century, and it's supposed to be something like a tourist center that could be preserved, you know. But like somebody said, this is Nigeria, we have no interest in our history, therefore anything goes. But for us, this new generation, not everything goes. I'm sure the young ones, I'm sure I'm also answering questions too. All right, God bless you.
Incidentally,